Ukrainian FPV drones brutally bombard terrified Russian soldiers in frozen battlefield. As reserves of armored vehicles run out amid catastrophic losses in Ukraine and Western Russia, the Russian military is normalizing assaults in civilian cars. And not just any civilian cars, but Lada GEGE, compact models that are just 16 feet from fender to fender and weigh slightly more than 1 ton. When the first Russian assault groups climbed into their GEGEs and rolled out for nearly suicidal attacks across the drone-patrolled no-man's land in eastern Ukraine last fall, it was possible to dismiss the GEGE assaults as one-offs by the most desperate and vehicle-deprived Russian regiments. It's no longer realistic to paint such a rosy picture for the Russian military's mechanization efforts. With losses of armored vehicles and other heavy equipment now exceeding 15,000, GEGE assaults are becoming more common. I guess this Lada storming is the norm now? Open source analyst Mocklison mused as they scrutinized yet another video feed from a Ukrainian drone unit blowing up Russian GEGEs attacking Ukrainian positions. Andrew Perpetua, another open source analyst, was equally bemused. "Assault time," he wrote. "Everyone into the Lada." The Ladas, not just GEGE models, but also slightly more powerful Nivas, began to appear in large numbers among Russian assault units as stocks of armored vehicles began running very low a few months ago. Russia builds maybe 200 new BMP-3 fighting vehicles and 90 new T-90M tanks annually, as well as a few hundred other new armored vehicles including BTR-82 wheeled fighting vehicles. But Russia has been losing armored vehicles at an annualized rate of 6,000 a year. For 2 years, the Kremlin comfortably made up the 4-figure gap between losses and production by pulling old Cold War vehicles out of long-term storage. The Cold War storage yards once held vast stocks of old tanks and other armored vehicles. But now even these stocks are running low. Open source analyst Jompy explained it best, taking BTR-wheeled fighting vehicles as an example. It looks like Russia still has overall 2,358 stored BTR-60 by 70s out of the 3,673 it had in storage before the war, Jompy wrote in December. In reality, most of the vehicles are older BTR-60s and -70s, and in poor condition, Jompy added. How poor? They squinted at satellite imagery of the 1063rd Logistics Center in Sigurjuo, near the Russian border with Mongolia, and additional imagery of vehicle parks in the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad as well as Smolino, just west of Moscow. It turned out, none of the vehicles in Sigurjuo had moved from their parking spots since 2020. The ones in Kaliningrad had been immobile since 2018. Those in Sigurjuo hadn't moved an inch since 2010. A vehicle that doesn't move for so long is a dead vehicle, Jompy explained. And if you don't believe me, you surely have seen what happens to abandoned civilian cars over just a few years in the open air. For many months, observers have debated if and when the Russian armed forces would reach a critical tipping point, the exhaustion of vehicle generation efforts, and begin a long, painful process of demechanization. The normalization of Lada assaults is a clear sign they've passed the tipping point. Every day, the war Russia's wider war on Ukraine grinds on, the Russians will have fewer armored vehicles and will rely more on compact cars to carry troops into battle. For the second time in a month, a newly formed Ukrainian army brigade is disintegrating as it deploys to the front line in one of the most urgent sectors of Russia's 35-month wider war on Ukraine. This newly formed brigade did not undergo the necessary combat training, one relative of a 157th Mechanized Brigade trooper told Hromadski. but it was immediately sent to the hottest areas, including the besieged fortress city of Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine. Capturing Pokrovsk is one of Russia's top objectives as its wider war on Ukraine grinds into its fourth year. Defending it is one of Ukraine's top objectives. Given its importance, it's shocking to many observers that the Ukrainian army keeps reinforcing the city with dysfunctional units, including the 155th and 157th Mechanized Brigades. The situation in the 157th Mechanized Brigade mirrors that of other brigades in the 150th series, noted Militarland, a collective that tracks the Ukrainian military force structure. Soldiers were taken during the formation process, units hastily deployed to the front and sent without proper training, resulting in heavy casualties. The 157th Mechanized Brigade is one of the 8 150 series brigades, also including the 151st, 153rd, 154th, 155th, 156th, 158th, and 159th Mechanized Brigades that formed in 2023 or early 2024 and, after a lengthy period of training, began arriving on the front starting late last year.